Hi, welcome to Montana State of Mind with me, Montana. We are taking a break from our usual historical romances to do spooky season and read some vintage horror novels. Now, for the first time, not only are we reading something from the 90s, which is very painful to hear that 90s is now vintage, but hey, that's fine. I have my 1992 necklace on. This is one of the best books we've read on this channel. This book is fantastic. I'm saying this book is amazing and oh my God, go out and buy it. I'm just saying, out of the crazy ass shit that we have read on this channel, this one was very good. The plot's great. The dialogue's great. The characters are great. But for once, the ending is good. I feel like with a lot of these books, they are written well, the characters are great, the environment, everything's good, but they always fumble the endings. This ending, I read through this book in probably 2 days. I had to slow myself down. I could have read it in a day, but I was trying to slow myself down so I could come here and read it to you fresh. But it was so good. Each chapter was just so titillating. Of course, the novel I'm talking about is Vampire. What a great title. by Richie Tankersley Cusick. Now, this novel, this author, she wrote the novelization of the Buffy series. And we'll get into our fictional author lore here in a second. But this predates Buffy. And I'm not saying she influence Buffy in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying it's probably why she got the gig, is because this novel is very Buffy, very 90s vampire, hot guys, will they, won't they energy. This novel, I think, takes place in 1991. So yeah, if you ever see a little RTC novel, definitely pick it up. The lady knows how to write. She knows how to write a 90s cute teen horror novel. I know I had everybody panicking about a Patreon last video. Don't worry. I'm not going to do a Patreon anytime soon, even though I need to probably. Times are tough. And I know y'all know that. The economy is wild and it's about to be Christmas. Are you kidding me? It's wild. But don't worry. My goal is 5,000 subscribers, and then I can open up a Patreon and then steal all your money. I'm kidding. But don't worry. I had people panicking, worrying about if I was going to force y'all to pay for content. I wouldn't make y'all pay for this. I'm still standing on a sidewalk shouting stories with my little top hat, and y'all can throw some nickels in there if y'all want. But I know y'all were also upset that I wasn't getting paid by YouTube. As of that video posting, I've made $43, which is $43 more than what we originally had. Okay. So that's always good. I'm learning how to appease the YouTube gods while still remaining true to my video formats and sense of style, as we all have to do. I'm excited to get that $43 though, because I've been trying to find queer pulp fiction novels. I know they exist. I know someone's gay uncle has a box in his basement somewhere. I found some on eBay. I found the publications who made those novels. Boy, are they expensive. I want to do more queer content. I want to do more people of color. I would love to do more than just little white ladies, in historical romances, but those novels, because they're so rare, are very expensive. So with that $43, I can then almost afford some of those queer novels that I've been trying to get. I found one for $70 about soldiers in the Congo, and I guess gay stuff happens. So I'd like to get it. But yeah, do know that I am actively trying to make this channel, the literature, as inclusive as possible. if you can imagine, prior to almost like 2006, not a lot of circulation of people of color novels and queer novels and all that stuff, you know? Like, I've been trying to find any Asian written. I can find a ton of Asian historical romances. Don't worry. A lot of people love to fetishize the Orient. I can find a ton of those, of which we will read. But just trying to find like those novels and stuff. I don't know. It's been interesting. Now, back to how these videos usually work, if you are new to this channel, is we will discuss the cover art, because the cover art in itself is usually a work of art and deserves to be discussed. We do fictional made-up author lore based on a profile picture of said author that is not based in any way, shape, or form in their real lives. And then I recap this book for y'all because, one, these books are hard to find, and two, not a lot of people want to sit there and read them like I do. I am the crazy person that spends hours every day reading these damn things and writing notes. This cover is very accurate. I know in the past it feels like it is again a Goosebumps, TJ Jacobus kind of style of maybe they are given a prompt of what the book is about and the cover is made. However, this one is so accurate. I pictured this girl like the whole book because she's just, you know, a little blonde 90s girl. I pictured her like the whole book, but there is a lot of window scratching and stuff. So this is very accurate. I love the neon colors. Very 90s, very 90s mall aesthetic, you know? Like, this just looks like it was found in a Suncoast video store, and I know a video store wouldn't sell books, but you never know. It just looks like a Suncoast video store vibe. I don't know. Now, Miss Richie, I found this photo of her, and I can already smell the Whole Foods. She's gonna smell like a gorgeous Whole Foods. And she does look like a women's history lib professor. She does look like she's burned a few bras back in her day. Not a damn curling iron or chemical hair product has touched that hair since 1960, probably. You know, somewhere Miss Janelle is like shaking because Miss Janelle is just like, girl, flip your hair upside down and tease it. Please. Cut the dead ends off, please. Again, she looks like she smells like Whole Foods. Now, she probably has a few cats and maybe a bird. I used to work at a zoo, and you know, you have like, at the zoo, we had hoofstock people, we had the great ape people, reptile people, that was me. And then you had the bird people, and the bird people were always like single little old ladies that just loved birds. They love birds. That was my least favorite animal to work with at a zoo. That's a whole different subject, but birds were my least favorite. Me and birds don't get along. There was a cockatoo named Molly, and she has a brother that's in the New Orleans Zoo. So if you see him, tell him I got eyes. Anyways, she looks like a bird person. She's probably got maybe an African gray that she's just obsessed with. She loves coffee. Definitely like a cup of joe in the 90s type of lady. She's going to go not to the Starbucks because she doesn't want to give money to like a capitalist giant corporation. But she was probably a pioneer in supporting a lot of queer arts in the 90s. She was probably that professor that let the gay kids like hang out in her office and helped them with like pride stuff. She was probably a pioneer of like little pride celebrations in the 90s. Like, she just looks like that comforting teacher where she's not going to hug you and she's not going to cook good food, but she's going to be there for you. You know, when you're a young man and your boyfriend breaks up with you and you don't really have anyone to go to with that issue, she's going to be like, tell me all about it over this cup of coffee. And she's going to probably smoke a hand-rolled cigarette. Disclaimer. I'm not a professional reader. I'm not a professional voice actress. I think that is evident when you watch these videos, but we like to have fun. This one's going to be tough. I have to find a way to differentiate 4 male voices, 4 adult men voices. Can I do it? I don't know. I've been trying to walk around my house trying to find these voices, and maybe through this video, we'll try to find them together. I wish I could do this live so y'all could be like thumbs up if y'all like that one, thumbs down if not. But do know I'm trying to differentiate their voices and stuff, and I try to add voices when I'm reading the dialogue because I just think it makes it more fun than me just reading it in my normal tone. And so, without further ado, let us begin Vampire by Richie Tankersley Cusick.
Fear not, my love. I have crossed oceans of time to be with you.
You so crazy, you could have just called.
I want you to be mine for all eternity.
Listen, you don't know what you're getting into, because I'm telling you, I'm just like a virus. Once I get in your system, it's hard to get me out.
Our story begins with a mysterious prologue. We're in a carnival, a 90's carnival, and there is a traveler woman, and she reads fortunes, and she's a psychic. A group of young men pushing and shoving, and oh, you get in there. No, you. They come in to get their fortunes told, and she says, I will do you each individually, and you cannot tell my predictions or else they won't come true. She does all of them, and then she gets to the last guy, and we don't know who it is. But she tells him, my poor child, I see anguish, despair. I see terrible tragedy. You alone walk as the undead. You are not like the others, with no choice of your fate. You understand, her client whispered. I really believe you understand. What can I do? Perhaps if you find your heart's true love, your chosen one, she gave a mysterious smile. Yes, your chosen one will bring you peace at last. Do you really think so? Your chosen one. Now go, and may heaven have mercy upon your soul. The traveler woman chuckled now, watching them all leave. The reckless group of 5 herding one another off into the blinking neon light. Only one of them wasn't laughing anymore. Do you know it does not say traveler woman, but this was a time, so I'm changing that word to be more respectable. And that is my personal choice. I'm not saying we should erase it and do away with it. I'm just saying, for the purpose of this channel, I'm changing it. So we have that mysterious little prologue. And I just want to say, I think this would make an amazing TV movie. I just think this would make an amazing TV movie. Back to the plot. We open on young Darcy. She is your typical 90's blonde girl. Her mother is just frantic, giving Charlotte Pickles energy of just, oh my God, I'm going to be late. My flight's about to take off. We got to go. Where is your Aunt Alicia? And they're waiting for dear Aunt Alicia because apparently Darcy's mama has to go get married and go on her honeymoon in Europe to some rich guy because it's just her and Darcy. Again, there's never any whole families in these novels. Rarely is there a whole family. It's always like kid, spouse, mom or dad. But anyways, she's got to go do that because that's how she kind of establishes money for her and her daughter. She's kind of a gold digger from the vibes. She's got to go do that. And while they're waiting for Aunt Alicia, they are outside the store that Darcy's uncle owns that she has never met. And Darcy's like, oh, doesn't Uncle Jake live around here and work here? Literally right there. Why don't I just go stay with him? And we get the vibe from Darcy's mom that Uncle Jake is super irresponsible, super crazy. She doesn't have a lot to do with him. We all have that family member. Doesn't have a lot to do with him. And she's like, no. Your Aunt Alicia will be here any minute. Anyways, she gets a call probably on a huge cell phone. Aunt Alicia has to go to a business meeting. Can't come pick Darcy up for a few days. Darcy's mom has to go on this honeymoon. She has to go get married. And then a young man comes out of the store and he is Very, very attractive. Darcy is checking him out. She's like, oh my God, who is this cutie? And then Darcy's mom's like, that's your Uncle Jake. And she's like, what? Like, how much of an uncle? How much of an uncle? We don't really know a lot about him. Anyways, Uncle Jake sees Darcy's mom and he's just like, oh, you off to go get married again? What's this? The fourth or fifth one? Alicia's not helping you? Darn. To which I'm thinking, Darcy's 17. Is she not old enough to stay home alone? 17's plenty old enough to stay home alone. If you're a responsible teenager, which Darcy seems to be. So, like, why don't you just leave her home? I don't know. Maybe they live in a bad side of town. So, Jake and Darcy's mom are fighting. Darcy's mom finally relucts and is just like, look, Jake, can you keep Darcy for a few days before Alicia can pick her up? And he's just like, what, am I, her fucking babysitter? She's like, kind of, right now. I have to go. And Darcy's just like, happy to be here, guys. Everybody's fighting over how they don't want me. This will be great in therapy. So Darcy will be staying with Uncle Jake, and his store is called The Dungeon, and it is a house of horrors. In the sense of, it's kind of like a wax museum without them being wax. Like, there's little areas and stages of different iconic monsters. Dracula, werewolf, Black Lagoon, things of that nature. How many exhibits are there? 25 in all, but I'm adding some. I never realized there were so many villains. In a half-light, Jake's smile seemed mask-like. You'd be surprised. I just thought that was like a really good kind of like, Down the street, Jake also runs a club, and it's just called The Club. Like, it's not called The Club, but they just keep referring to it as The Club. So we'll call it The Club. She meets Liz, and Liz is a young girl around the same age, big red hair, red lipstick, glasses. Iconic. She meets Kyle, Liz's brother. Not much is said about Kyle, but throughout the book, I'm getting like a himbo energy. Very jock, very athletic, very cute golden retriever energy. We learn that Darcy is 17 and Jake is only 23. They're only like, what, 6 years apart? Again, Darcy's probably just thinking like how related are we? We also meet Brandon. And Brandon he has long brown black hair that he ties back in a ponytail, very tall, very masculine energy. And then we have Elliot. And Elliot wears sunglasses all the time because he was in a motorcycle wreck. Now, if I'm to cast these, let's just cast this real quick. I don't usually do this, but it just kept in my head. Jake. Jake is a slouchy uncle who runs a horror museum, of which, can I say, any man that is obsessed with horror, I don't trust. And this is my personal opinion. I'm not saying every man this and all that stuff. From my experience, if a man is obsessed with horror movies, like just horror movies, it makes me concerned a dash because a lot of horror movies are very violent towards women. And I'm just not comfortable with someone who's like super into watching that all the time, if that makes sense. So as much as we like Jake, it's just a red flag for me personally that he's super into horror. And only that. Jake, though, slouchy uncle, he's wearing a red football jersey, jeans, and Converse. He has curly black hair. I immediately thought young Pedro Pascal. I probably bring him up and cast him in every book. As you can tell, I'm a fan. But anyways, a young Pedro Pascal would definitely be an uncle. I think a lot of us would be like, how related are we, though? If not him, I think, of course, a Patrick Dempsey would have probably been cast as this. But I think Will Smith would have been really good in this. The range of his like personality throughout this novel, and again, just like this like jersey and Converse and stuff, this like really hip uncle vibe, is kind of given like a young, just out of Fresh Prince, but before Men in Black, Will Smith. Liz, absolutely Judy Greer. Fern Mayo, Jawbreaker, Judy Greer. She's absolutely, like, no questions asked. That's Judy Greer. She's the only person that can capture this, like, as we will see again, like this kind of like neurotic energy, of which Judy Greer has a great memoir called I Don't Know Where You Know Me From, like Memoirs of a Co-Star, which I think is fabulous because we all know Judy Greer. She's always the like bridesmaid in a movie, but never the bride. She's never had like her own thing, but she's always this amazing presence in everything she's in. She deserves her own movie. Kyle. Kyle, again, athletic, himbo energy. He's they're all in a band. He's the drummer. I was thinking Simu Liu. I was thinking maybe even a Brendan Fraser. Yeah, definitely that. Like, I think Simu Liu or like a young Brendan Fraser, excuse me. And I know what you're saying. Like, my casting's everywhere with like times and stuff, but it's just who I pictured. And then we have Brandon. Brandon, absolutely Lou Diamond Phillips. La Bamba, are you kidding me? It's absolutely going to be Lou Diamond Phillips. If not him, then rest in peace, the man that played the Green Power Ranger, I think would have been great in this role for Brandon. He literally had the ponytail ready to go. Our last one, Elliot. Elliot has wispy blonde hair and wears sunglasses. So he's kind of giving crazy white boy energy of like Eminem, Matthew Lillard. You know what I'm talking about. Like that crazy white boy energy where you're just like concerned. Devin Sawa could have probably done this if he shaved his head. Because Devin Sawa was in an Eminem. He was in the Eminem music video. Yeah, so totally him. Now, Darcy, like I said, I just pictured the girl from the novel, the cover, but of course we could have literally anybody. We could have a young Reese Witherspoon. We could have a Sarah Michelle Gellar. We could have a Britney Spears would have been really cute. A young little Britney Spears. I would have loved to have seen her in that. But anyways, that's kind of my casting choices because there's just so many. So I like to kind of cast them so I can kind of figure out who's who. They have this funny moment. Well, they are discussing that there is a murder recently. A young girl was murdered. Okay. And it is said that her throat was slit. And that is how she was murdered. But the calling card of the vampire, as they call it, is 2 little pinpricks on the neck. And the reason they say that the throat is cut is because there's so much blood. So a lot of people are speculating, is it a vampire that's just like got a ton of blood going on? Or is it someone who is slashing their necks and leaving 2 dots like as a calling mark? Anyways, there was this funny moment. Go on and tell him the rest. Liz nudged Kyle roughly in the side. About all the blood everywhere and the marks. Kyle hesitated a moment. Well, she had these marks on her neck. I guess she would, Jake said offhandedly, if her throat was cut. Just sweet little Kyle just being like, well, there was like these little marks on her neck. And Jake's just like, well, yeah, her throat was cut. Probably would be a mark on her neck. And I guess this club allows underage kids. I don't really understand this club because Jake doesn't allow alcohol at it, but the band plays and like a lot of young kids are there. And by kids, I mean like 17 to 23. I don't know. We learned that Brandon with the ponytail, he is Dracula in a community theater play. We learned that Liz is a bitch. Literally, like she's just fucking mean. She does not like that Darcy is here and kind of ruining the vibe of her being the only girl and getting all the attention. Kyle tries to maintain the peace between Liz's bitchiness and Darcy. He's kind of the peacekeeper of a lot of these groups. Elliot leans into Darcy and tells her, you're going to die. And everybody's like, Elliot, whoa, pump the brakes. And Darcy's kind of like, what? And Elliot says he can tell the future and that she's going to die. To which Brandon's like, well, we're all going to die eventually. So, like, that's just Elliot. He's just weird. Brandon and Darcy talk about Jake. She does not know shit about this man that she is staying with that is supposedly her uncle. He kind of tells her, like, he worked at the dungeon, the horror museum, from this old man took it over from the old man named Gus, and now runs it and the club, and he's just always working. He's just always working. Kyle mentions of Elliot's thing, because Elliot says, I can tell the future. Kyle mentions that they went to a carnival earlier. They went to a carnival and got their fortunes read. So one of these guys is the one that the little psychic was talking to. So one of these guys is a vampire. And that's the fun of the story, is we're going to try to figure out which one. Kyle says that Elliot was in a motorcycle accident, and that's why he has to wear the sunglasses, which is perfectly fine. We learn Uncle Jake, believes vampires are real. Literally thinks they're real. Like, not even a question. He's just like, they're very, like, he's just talking about all these facts, and he's trying to tell Brandon so he can get ready to play Dracula. He's like, you got to get your head in the vampire's head. You know, you got to be the vampire. Brandon offers to walk Darcy back to the apartment, because the apartment is above the dungeon. Which is great, because she has to go through the dungeon to get to the apartment, which I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? My mom's going to drop me off at my hot uncle's house. I have to walk through a horror museum with all of this scary shit, and the lights are out, to get to the apartment of a man I don't know. Like, what? Brandon walks her home, and he is a total creep. And I know it's the 90s, and I think at this time it was seen as flirting, but in a modern context, total creep. He literally tells her, because she doesn't know really where she's going. She got there hours ago. And he's making fun of her. Like, you don't know where the apartment is? You don't know where the store is? And she's like, I just got here, man. I don't know anything. And he says, oh, so I could take you anywhere, huh? And you couldn't do anything about it. And I'm just like, not what you say. Not what you say. Nope. Like, as hot and fun as all these guys are made out to be in this novel, little ticks on Montana's radar of like, ooh, Jake's really likes horror novels or horror stuff. Brandon says that. And we'll get to Kyle, and Elliot says, you're going to die. Like, what? They get to Jake's place. It needs a woman's touch. And Darcy's like, look at this mess. I have to clean. And I understand what she means. I know it can be seen as really like sexist for the time, but I also do that when I have to house sit. Back in the day, or babysit, is I would just start cleaning. I'm a very tidy person. If you have dead leaves on your plants at a party, I will pull them off. She gets to her room, where Jake's like, you'll be staying upstairs. And she can tell he tried to zhuzh it up. He put fresh sheets on the bed. There's a little mason jar with a red carnation. Not my favorite flower. I find them kind of cheap, but the effort is there. As she gets ready for bed, she notices she's kind of having a Goldilocks moment. Someone's been in this bed. She can see like an imprint of, you know how you can tell when a bed's so straight, you can kind of tell when someone's been in it. And she pulls the sheets back. There's a dead rat without its head. The head has been cut off of a dead rat and put in her bed. I would be booking a hotel room. There's too many red flagging at this moment in time. She obviously screams and freaks out because that's disgusting. And if it was a dead rat, but a headless dead rat, the blood is seeped into the mattress. There's no cleaning that at that point in time. Jake shows up. Oh my God, girl, why are you screaming? There's a dead rat, a headless dead rat, not just a dead rat, a headless dead rat in this bed. And he does what will become infuriating throughout this novel of dismisses it, feels like she's overreacting, and says that he has stray cats that come in and out, and maybe it was one of them. To which I'm like, if you have stray cats bringing in dead rats into your apartment, that's beyond disgusting. That's diseases. Anyways, he is doing that typical thing of like, oh my God, it's probably just one of the dead cats. And Darcy, of course, is like, who cut its head off? You have she's kind of like us. You have cats. You have cats that you let come into your apartment and bring dead rats that bleed. There's blood everywhere. This is a normal occurrence for you. This is average experience for you. And he's just like, yeah, all the time. Again, book a hotel. He goes back to the club. He is never home. He is never home. Darcy's kind of having an anxiety moment of like her mom is on a rich honeymoon in Europe. Jake does not give a shit about her. There's a dead rat in her bed. Blood. Like, again, I'm just thinking it's in the mattress. What are you going to do? Liz is super mean to her. There's literally a horror museum downstairs. She's kind of having a fuck my life moment. She's like, fuck my life. Fuck my life. This is going to be a great week. Thanks, Mom. We cut to just a random girl in an alley. And it's that typical like old movie horror moment of she's in an alley and it's like and someone's breathing and she's like and walking faster and she stumbles. And she looks up and there's a mysterious figure and he says, "Will you be with me for eternity?" I'm sure he doesn't say it like that, but it's the vampire. And just cuts to black. We wake up. Jake is pissed because Darcy cleaned everything and now he can't find it. He can't find anything because things are clean. The man that lets stray cats bring in dead rats can't find anything. Mm-hmm. Again, only Pedro Pascal could play this part because only Pedro Pascal would I ever allow like this to happen. I'd just be like, Pedro, Jesus, I'll stay, but like, Jesus, let me clean. Jake talks about his past like resume. He's had a very extensive career. He's done a lot of little odd jobs. He doesn't have mirrors in his home, which is weird. You should have at least one mirror. But his thing is like he's a guy and he just throws on hopefully clean clothes and just goes to work all the time. He just doesn't even bother with a mirror. To which I'm like, how do you shave? Does he shave? I don't know. Darcy is given the position of she will run the dungeon because Liz was fired. Great. Let's make Liz more pissed at Darcy. This girl shows up and all of the guys are just, oh my God, fresh meat, checking her out. Her boyfriend, her and Brandon aren't dating, but they're kind of like an item. It's kind of weird because he is really mean to her and she's really mean to him, but everybody understands that they're like a thing. I don't know. And Brandon's throwing himself at Darcy. Kyle, her brother, is throwing himself at Darcy. Jake's her uncle, gives her her job running the dungeon. And Liz is just like, you don't want to make this girl more pissed. This is not the person you want to piss off. She's really crazy. As Darcy is preparing pamphlets, brochures, whatever, Elliot creeps up on her. And he's very good at that. He's very creepy, silent with his little sunglasses. And he's just like, hey. And Darcy's like, Jesus Christ, please don't do that ever. We're in a very creepy atmosphere. Please don't sneak up on me. And Elliot is security at the dungeon because he's very good at being fucking creepy. And he's like hides out in the exhibits and makes sure no one steals anything. Darcy goes to find Elliot for lunch because she's still a nice damn person, even though he is super creepy. And she's trying to find him. And he again, boop, pops up, scares the shit out of her. And he says the ominous prediction of another body will be found tonight. I guess, okay, what is Elliot's voice? Again, it's Matthew Lillard, Eminem, Devin Sawa. Like, I'm trying to think of every creepy trailer park white boy with a buzz cut I knew that really liked horror movies. Probably had one of those Calvin peeing stickers on their truck. I'm thinking Matthew Lillard of like, another body will be found tonight. I don't know. I feel like Matthew Lillard would like have a fun, jovial way of saying it, whereas Eminem and Devin Sawa would be like super serious. Anyways, he says another body will be found tonight. Close up shop. She sets out to wash the rat sheets. Again, the blood. You just have to burn the whole mattress. A dead rat was in it with blood. You're going to have to burn the mattress. There's no amount of just clean. Throw the sheets away. Go buy new ones. Go buy new sheets. There's no washing that. Anyways, she goes to set out to wash these sheets. She is exploring while the clothes wash at the laundromat. She finds rehearsals for the play that Brandon is in, and she peeps. She gives a little peepee peep. We see Brandon rehearsing his lines. He's very good at being Dracula. He has that big, hulking, masculine vibe with the long black hair. Very good at it. Kyle is there because he's a supportive friend. And Kyle is there, and he explains that Brandon just really gets into whatever he's in. He has a lot of eras, as we call them now, and this is his vampire era. Darcy is super flirty with Brandon and Kyle. You kind of wonder which one she'll end up with. Either way, Liz is pissed because Liz is dating Brandon, kind of, and that Kyle is her brother. So it's a weird little love square triangle. They go grab a bite to eat. Darcy thinks she sees Elliot. She's like, is that Elliot across the street? And they're like, Elliot's at work, girl. And she says he has a unique face, to which I'm like, he wears sunglasses. You don't see half of his face, but okay. They tell her he works at a gas station at night. There's no possible way that he could just be out and about. They also say that Elliot's a little off since his motorcycle crash. They think that he thinks that a UFO made him crash. Possible. She tells him about the dead rat, to which Kyle says, oh, Jake doesn't have any cats anymore. His cat Lester passed away like a year ago. He doesn't have a cat. And Brandon's like, yeah, he doesn't have any cats. And she tells him what Jake said. And they were like, I guess he could take in another cat and just rename it Lester. I don't know. They were like, I guess that's possible. But point being, Jake hasn't had any apparent stray cats roaming his apartment. She has a panic attack walking back to the laundromat because, again, it's dark and scary, and there is apparently a murderer loose. And she gets lost, and she just gets very overwhelmed. She pulls over in an alley, as we all do, leaves the population of a crowded street where it's safe, and pulls into a dark alley to take a breather. And there, she sees a wad of dirty clothes. Ew. Oh, they're wet. And kind of sticky. Oh, this is a dead body. She finds a dead body. I don't know. Dead rat, dead body. Book a hotel. I'm going to read some dialogue of... She is... this is after the police come get the body, and she's a little shaken up. Here, Jake said, drink this. Darcy's drinking a cup of coffee, which I don't think is what you need to ease your nerves, but it's the 90s. She's still shaking. Jake's hand came into view, but another hand gently pried the cup from her fingers. It's okay, Darcy, Kyle said. I've got it. Around her, the noises of the club seemed strangely dreamlike. I told them everything I know, Darcy mumbled. Everything I saw. The cops are gone now. Jake leaned forward, peering anxiously into her face. You might as well go home. Can't I stay here with you? Her voice rose. Well, sure, Jake nodded. Whatever you want. I could take her home, Kyle suggested. You get on stage, Jake said. You already late starting. And you guys quit arguing up there. It looks bad. Darcy, Kyle patted her arm. Are you going to be okay? Of course she is, Jake nudged him. Go, now. Darcy reached for her coffee and tried another sip. So, Jake said, someone was following you? No, I mean, I don't know. I guess not. Jake threw up his hands. Which is it? Rude. That's not in the book. That's just me. That's really rude, okay? The girl's... Give her a second. You keep giving her coffee. She can't calm her nerves if you keep giving her fucking coffee. I thought someone was, but they weren't. Or maybe they went away. But you didn't see anyone, right? No one you recognized. He leaned forward, his voice urgent. No. What were you doing away over on that block anyway? It's not even near the apartment. I got lost, okay? Darcy's voice trembled. I didn't know where I was. Everything looks different at night. I've only been here one day. Yeah, you're right, Jake said matter-of-factly. Don't cry. Darcy turned away from him, her heart sinking as she saw Liz making her way over to the table. I heard what happened, Liz announced, and Darcy had the instant impression of being blamed for the whole horrible incident. What'd she look like? Dead, Darcy retorted. That was really stupid of you to be out wandering alone, Liz said, sitting down in Kyle's vacated chair. I was getting my laundry, Darcy tried to compose herself. Before that, I wasn't alone. I was with Brandon and Kyle. Really? Liz's tone went icy, and Darcy stood up, looking appealingly at Jake. Can we please go home now? I'm surprised you even remembered where it was, Jake said, considering the state you were in. He is so fucking rude. He's so fucking rude. I didn't. I told the policeman I was your niece and he knew where to find you. My cousin Tony, Liz nodded. He said you were really freaking out. Darcy turned away and felt Jake's hand on her elbow. I can't get away right now, Darcy. I've got someone waiting in my office. I'll be done in about an hour. I'll go home with her, Liz said. I can wait, Darcy said firmly. I'll just be here till Jake's through. Brandon's picking me up here, Liz said. And Darcy could hear the smugness in her voice. Go on with Liz, Jake said. No sense waiting around this place. We can dump her on our way, Liz raised an eyebrow. Unless, of course, she needs a babysitter at the apartment. That won't be necessary. Darcy's smile was stiff, and she followed Liz out onto the street. Brandon pulled up almost immediately, and Liz jumped in beside him while Darcy collapsed in the back seat. As Liz filled Brandon in on the latest murder, Darcy could see his worried glances in the rearview mirror. God, Darcy, are you all right? He sounded shaken, but Liz brushed him off. She's fine. We're dropping her off, and then we're going to that movie you've been promising to take me to all week. And I can stay out late, remember, since I don't have a job to go to anymore. Brandon ignored her remark, his eyes darting between the mirror and the road. Well, is Jake home? I mean, we can't just leave Darcy there by herself. She's a big girl, Liz retorted. She's used to taking care of herself, aren't you, Darcy? Darcy was too drained to answer, and to her surprise, it was Brandon who accepted Liz's challenge. Lay off, Liz. Can't you see she's upset? Upset? The sound in Liz's throat wasn't pleasant. I don't know why she's upset, walking around alone after dark. She was just asking for trouble. She's lucky she didn't end up in the alley like that other girl. God, Liz. There's no mistaking the disgust in Brandon's tone. As the car pulled to the curb, Darcy got out at once, managing a feeble smile in Brandon's direction. Thanks, I really appreciate it. Hey, no problem. Let's go! I hate missing the movie! Just get a vibe of like some of the characters. Jake is a fucking asshole. Wow. Fuck, he's so fucking rude. This little 17-year-old girl, I don't care if you're 23, 26, whatever he is. I don't care if you're 17. Like, have some decency of people going through shit. She just saw a dead body in an alley in a town that she don't know. She don't know any of y'all. Okay? She had a dead rat in her bed. And you're going to just grill her and just be like, well, which is it? Well, which is it? Well, which is it? Like, ooh. Darcy has more patience than me. Oh, because as you can tell, I would have not had that attitude about it. And then Liz gonna say, well, we can just dump her like she's been dumped by her mama. Excuse me? You raggedy red-headed. No. Like, don't be rude to me. Don't be rude. I'm going to match your energy with the energy you give me. If that's the energy. Little girl with your red lipstick and your red hair clashing left and right. She is in the spooky, kooky horror museum because, again, she has to go through it to get to the fucking apartment. There are beaded curtains. We love a beaded curtain. Great for security. Like, you can always hear them rattling if someone's around. And that's just what they do. They're rattling. They're shaking. They're given an ASMR experience she didn't ask for. They sent her alone in the dark to go through this dungeon. Like, just the people around her. It's idiots helping idiots. Everything is dark except Dracula's exhibit. It is lit. How convenient. Darcy goes up to it to observe the details, and it's so lifelike, and she notices is kind of entranced at this hypnotic red ring. And as she is slowly becoming intoxicated by the allure of this ruby red ring, the lights go out. And as the lights go out, she feels pressure on her neck. Obviously, she is screaming, as one would do, and she hears Jake coming through the lobby saying, Darcy, what the fuck? Not literally, but as he's yelling, the pressure immediately removes itself. They argue, typical argument of he is dismissing all of her fears, all of what she's gone through. And she's like, where have you been? Who is that man in your office? And he's like, it's nobody, it's nobody, it's nobody. Don't worry about it. Jake, throughout this novel, just to kind of get the vibe, because I can't cover all of it, but Jake throughout this novel keeps having these like sketchy ass dudes in and out of his office. And he's always like kind of just on edge constantly, as we have seen. He is constantly on edge of like, who talked to you? Who did you see? And you're just like, you can't grasp what he's into, but Jake's up to something. Okay. He's too nervous. He's too angry. He's on edge. And there's like random creepy guys that keep staring at Darcy. Anyways, she's like, who's that guy in your office? He's a super creep. He said, don't worry about it, little girl. To which I'm like, you're only 6 years apart. And he leaves again. Jake's always gone. Darcy goes to sleep with the window open. But it's really hot, so you can't blame her. It's kind of hot in that apartment. And there is a screen. Because at first I was like, why would you leave the window open? But they do have a screen. You never see a lot of screens on windows in horror stuff. It's always just a wide open freaking window. Do y'all not have screens across this wonderful country? Get a screen on your window. I'll read you that scene. Darcy. I'm awake, Mom. Groggily, Darcy turned over and groped for the alarm clock, her hands swishing empty air. With a low groan, she reached again and her eyelids struggled open. She suddenly realized that the unfamiliar darkness wasn't her old room at all. Of course, I'm at Uncle Jake's. I must have been dreaming. Darcy. The voice came again, soft, eerie. Darcy raised her head from the pillow and froze. As the voice whispered her name a third time, she saw a subtle darkening at the window, as if shadows had gathered just outside. Someone scratched at the screen. Something trying to get in. In paralyzed horror, Darcy saw the outline of a hand working at the edge of the seal, heard soft scraping of fingers against metal. She tried to scream but couldn't. Helplessly, she saw the fingers groping across her window, like quick black worms squirming out at the night. She scooted back against the wall, her mouth open in a soundless cry. The fingers froze, like outstretched claws. As the hand pulled back into the darkness, something glittered at her and disappeared. She saw it in that split second. A glimmer of red. Something, someone, watching her with his bloodshot eyes. She tries to find Jake. Why, I don't know. I guess because he's the only adult. Tries to find Jake. She finds Kyle and Elliot. And she has a weird conversation with them. We learn that Elliot's mom is dying of cancer, which is very sad and awful. We learn that Kyle knows where her room is. And for a split second, I picked up on it, but I don't know if it was supposed to be picked up on. Maybe it was like a sloppy editing mistake or something. But he knows where her room is, like from the outside. And he's not that close with Jake to like know the layout of his apartment. And I was kind of like, how does Kyle know the layout of that apartment? We also learned there's no way up to the window because it is like 2 stories, if not tall, because it's a store and then first, and then she's up. So it's just like 3 stories tall and there's no fire escape. So Kyle is the least assholey about her, you know, like, oh my God, someone's trying to kill me. Out of Brandon, Jake, Elliot, and Kyle, Elliot doesn't count because Elliot's a creep. But Kyle is the least like, he's not like, oh my God, you're so right, Darcy. But he's just like, okay, let's go look at your window and see what we can find. They are going to the lobby of the dungeon. Liz shows up and Elliot's like, hey, I can't let you in, Liz. You don't work here anymore and you can't be in here like in between hours. This isn't a hangout. And Liz flips out. And you feel really bad for Liz because she kind of lets out like, oh, this like little pretty blonde shows up and everybody just can't get enough of her. And y'all fall over head over heels every time she walks in to work or walks into the club and everybody's just vying for her. And she's just like, fuck me, right? And you feel kind of bad for her at this moment. Like maybe her craziness is just a way of her expressing emotions that she's not in touch with yet. As Darcy is cleaning up the exhibits, she notices Dracula, which I don't know how she's going through this exhibit after all she's going through. Couldn't be me. But she is a 90s blonde white heroine in this novel. So we know that stereotype. Anyway, she's going to go clean the exhibit. And she notices Dracula's ring is missing. That hypnotic ruby red ring is gone. And she wonders if those bloodshot red eyes that were twinkling at her at the window was actually just a really attractive accessory. She asked Elliot, because she's like, hey, you're security. You're supposed to know if someone steals something. I think someone stole the ring. He doesn't know what she's talking about. He's like, what ring? What ring? Dracula's ring, that big ruby ring. It was kind of like iconic. It's gone, so I think someone stole it. He didn't have a ring. I'm with these exhibits 24/7. Like Dracula didn't have a ring. Again, all of these guys keep dismissing her to the point I will give the author credit. You're just like, are they all vampires? Like, are they all teaming up on her? Just fucking with her like a cat and a mouse? Like, that's what I'm thinking at this moment. I'm thinking all of them are toying with this girl. This is just a fun little game to them. And here, she's waiting for Kyle to come pick her up because they're all going to go to the club. And we have this. Up in her room, Darcy flipped on the light and stared across at the window. It was all coming back to her again. Her horrible dream fantasy, which is, I would think, called a nightmare, but go off. The hand clawing at the screen. That eye. No. That ring. Going closer, she reached out and touched the screen, her fingers sliding from top to bottom. I didn't dream it, did I? There was a hand here. And Dracula's ring is missing, isn't it? She leaned close to the window and looked down. It's just an alley, like Kyle said. A sheer drop to the ground? So how could anyone have possibly been at my window? On a sudden impulse, Darcy turned and hurried downstairs. Clicking back the latch on the lobby door, she made sure she couldn't lock herself out, then stood out on the sidewalk and stared up at the old building. Blank walls and black windows stared back at her. The side street was deserted and still. At the corner of the building, she stopped and looked into the cramped little alley that crouched below her attic room. It was so dark in there. Too dark. And as she carefully moved forward, shadows pressed in from all sides as if trying to suffocate her. She stopped directly below her window and gazed up, the straight brick walls, shaking her head in bewilderment. Must have dreamed it. And then she spotted something. About 3 feet ahead of her, a tall fence rose up, dead-ending in the alleyway. But between the fence and the building lay a dark, narrow space and something else that jutted out from the lower corner of the building. It looked like a step. Cautiously, Darcy approached it, holding her breath as she peeked around the corner. It was a step, the bottom step of a fire escape, and crawled up the back wall. Heart pounding, she took hold of the railing and began to climb the metal stairs, and when she reached the small landing, the door she found there was locked. Remembering back, her mind sketched a quick floor plan of the apartment, and her grip slowly tightened on the railing. The door had to open to Jake's bedroom. Darcy leaned against the wall and tried to think. When Jake showed me around the apartment, he never showed me his own room. Was it because of this door? Frowning, she stared down at the fire escape again. But this still doesn't explain how someone could climb up my window. She tilted her head back and carefully scanned the side of the building. Then slowly, her eyes widened. She hadn't noticed the ledge before. Because of its design and identical color of the building, it had merely seemed like a part of the wall that she'd stared at from the alley. But now she could see it was just wide enough for feet to stand on, positioned so that someone standing there could easily reach her window if they stretched, if they were tall. A cold lump formed in her chest, and her gaze swept up again. There, right in front of her. That's how they got on the ledge. And she ran her hands over the uneven bricks in the corner section of the wall, bricks uneven enough to become footholds and handholds. so that someone could boost himself up and work his way along the ledge and pry open my window. Swallowing a cry, Darcy scrambled back down the fire escape, telling herself she was being stupid, that it was impossible. And why would anyone want to get inside her room? Why would anyone want to hurt her? And what's the matter with you? You're getting hysterical, starting to imagine all sorts of crazy things. Stop it right now. You found some steps, a ledge. It doesn't mean anything, not anything at all. She reached the front door and rammed her shoulder against it. Suddenly, desperate to get inside, she turned the handle and pushed. And then with a gasp of disbelief, she twisted and pushed again. The door was locked. So she's obviously trying to get back in. She sees lights in the lobby and she's like, Jake, it's me, Darcy. Let me in. She can't get in. This dumb bitch goes through the basement window. I'm not that desperate. Like, is it closed off to the street? Even still, not going in a basement. What was her? I mean, it's just typical horror movie stuff of just wrong decision. She goes through the basement window. As she shimmies down there in the dark, the basement of a horror museum. Girl, have some self-preservation in your body. Is not enough red flags going off for you? Anyways, as she's down there, she looks up and she sees like shadowy footprints as if someone was like trying to come get her. And she's like, fuck. She wants to go see who it is, but she's like, I also don't want to die. As she's in a basement, but okay. The footprints kind of do that thing where they're like, choo, 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 to the left, to the right, looking for her, and then they leave. But she can't see the shoe or anything. Of course, in this novel, it's like, it was almost as if it was gliding. But she can't make out like what the shoes are. And as she's freaking out because mice are crawling all over her in this basement as she's hiding, a body shimmies its way down into that basement. And she's like, shit, I'm really going to die. Because I was out in the open, in the broad daylight, or wherever, and now I'm in a dark, creepy basement, and somebody just came in after me. Luckily for her, it was Brandon. Brandon heard her, or was looking for her, saw the basement window open, shimmied down there, in there, like, with her, like, anyways, he finds her dumb ass, and he's like, why are you in the basement? He checks the dungeon for murderers, I suppose. He checks it. They walk to the club. I'm going to call it that every time. They walk to the club. And on the way there, they get crazy close. I mean, he's putting his arm around her. They're talking about vampires. You remember Brandon's in his vampire era. Lou Diamond Phillips is in his vampire era. And he's just really telling her all this research that he's done of like the difference between being dead and being undead, and just like real fascinating vampire talk. And he's putting his arms around her and he's nuzzling her and she's nuzzling into him. They walk to the farmer's market that is closed at this moment in time, but Brandon shimmies on back there and comes out with a red carnation. Remember, red carnations. He comes out there with a little red carnation for you, milady. And they have a lovely little smoochy session, of which at the time I was just kind of like you don't know this man. But then I thought about it, and like this ambiance, like picture it. Okay, girls and gays. If Brandon, the hot vampire who's in a 90s rock band, grunge band, and you're walking with him at night and he kisses you at like an abandoned farmer's market while holding like little red flowers, like the aesthetic of that just seems super cute. They go to the club. Kyle sees the flowers and he goes, oh, he get those at the farmer's market. And you get the vibe from Kyle. Brandon has done this before. This is like a Brandon move. There's a creepy guy staring at Darcy from across the bar. Again, do they not serve, like, what is the alcohol here? Because we'll get to that later. Like, they don't serve alcohol. They get mad when the kids bring alcohol in, but then there's a bar. What are they serving? margarita mix. Liz shows up. She sees the carnation. She knows that is Brandon's calling card, apparently. She yanks him by his little ponytail and says, "We need to talk." I don't know why I said that like a New York accent, but she says, "We need to talk." And she yanks him by his little ponytail. Kyle seizes this opportunity as Liz and Brandon are fighting, and he's like, "Let's get out of here and go ride on my motorcycle." So Darcy's just having a day with these like hot guys trying to like one up each other. God bless her. She is riding on Kyle's little motorcycle, again, nuzzling her little face in his muscular, lean back. She thinks she sees Elliot again, and Kyle's like, "All right, we'll go to Elliot's work. We'll see if he's working." Again, Kyle's not dismissing her, but he is kind of like, let's just go to Elliot's work. He doesn't believe her outright, but I guess he's better than the other two, because the other two are just like, "You're crazy." We learn that Elliot works on the dangerous side of town, which it all sounds dangerous if girls are being murdered, but I guess there's a more dangerous side of town. His prediction of a murder was correct, so Elliot is 1 for 1 at this moment in time. We learn that the ring was for the Dracula play, that Kyle and Brandon were going to use the ring for the Dracula play, but then decided not to. Elliot predicts that Brandon will find any way to be in Darcy's future. And Kyle doesn't super enjoy that, but also Elliot predicts that there will be a new drummer in the band. So Kyle's kind of getting like his ego hurt a little bit, which is sad because Kyle's just a little golden retriever boy. And Elliot's just like, "So Brandon's going to do whatever he can to be in Darcy's future, and they're replacing you in the band." So they ride back to the apartment or the club or wherever the hell these kids go. I don't know. I can't ever tell like when a day ends and begins. Remember those days when we were so young and the days just muddled together? You didn't know. You would wake up at noon and then like do stuff until 3 a.m. or then like, and then go to work at 6 a.m. And just like, wow, you didn't have kids or responsibilities necessarily. What a time. And that's kind of the vibe of these kids. They're just like having a little adventure. There are no AMs to PMs. Everything's just time. They run into Liz walking at night by herself, upset. To which I'm like, why would Brandon let her do that? But Kyle tries to get her on the motorcycle. He's like, "Let me take you home." And she is absolutely hell-bent on absolutely not. She hits Kyle. She's trying to beat on him and he's trying to restrain her. Because they're brother and sister, you know, so it's not like abuse, but it's just, she's like punching him, like trying to get him to get him off because he's trying to like hold her down. Like, you can't walk alone at night while there's a murderer, Liz. And she's just like, "I don't fucking care." So Kyle leaves her. He's like, "All right," typical big brother. He's just like, fine. I don't give a fuck. I'm going home. Fucking walk, Liz. Darcy snuggle buggles back into Kyle's back. She's just inhaling his masculine aroma. Again, that's super cute too, of like a little 90s motorcycle ride with like a potential vampire drummer. I kind of want them all to be vampires. I kind of want them to be a vampire band. And then like it's such an anime trope of like the guy Harem and they're all vampires in a band and she's like the girl that they're all vying for. They find Brandon at the farmer's market, the abandoned farmer's market, or it's not open, not abandoned. It's not open. Nursing a head wound. Liz like clocked him in the head and he's got a big, huge bump on his head and he's icing it and he cannot drive home because he's dizzy. And I'm just like, shit, like Liz has a problem. You can't just go beating on people. Like, I know she's a girl and these are grown men, but you can't just beat your boyfriend and your brother and think that that is appropriate. It's not. It's abuse. Jake shows up pissed as usual because he has to do anything with these fucking teenagers. He shows up because Brandon called him because he's like, "I can't drive." Jake's like, "I can't fucking be here every time you and Liz fist fight." Jake is also super pissed that Liz and Darcy are out in the middle of the night. He's like, "Hey, you two." not the girls, but the two guys. He's like, hey, you two fucking idiots. Why is Liz walking down the road? And why is Darcy here? Why are these girls out and about? There's a murderer. You know, he has like an inkling of sense. And Kyle and Brandon are like, oh, it's fine. They're with us. And to which he's like, Liz isn't. Go get her. And so Kyle has to go get Liz. And here I would like to read the beginning of chapter 13. When Darcy heard the whispers, she thought at first she was dreaming. Voices low and urgent. Bodies moving too quickly. Quietly through the dark. She sat up, heart racing. She listened hard through the blackness and thought a door closed somewhere downstairs. Peeking out of her room and down the stairwell, she saw the lamp she'd left burning below. And once again, she thought she heard muffled voices. She slipped noiselessly down the living room and saw a sliver of light beneath Jake's door. Standing there, Darcy tried to decide if she should investigate, then froze as the door slid open a crack, letting out the soft voices from within. I almost got it this time. This was the worst. Shh, you'll wake Darcy. Still whispering, the voices were unrecognizable to her, but then the first one came again, bordering on panic. I didn't expect it. The struggle. Oh, God. Holding her breath, Darcy saw Jake move into her line of vision, saw him holding something, saw him throw it into the closet. His clothes were torn and bloody, and there was more blood streaming down from his hand. He was talking to someone that Darcy couldn't see, and as the closet door groaned shut, he moved out of sight again. She heard someone else speaking. Who? Jake. Who else is in there? But only caught the end of what was being said. Have to take care of her. Darcy felt a stab of terror. There was a loud thud as if someone collapsed against a wall, and then a muffled cry, broken and anguished. I can't stand this anymore. Oh, God. What am I going to do? Darcy didn't want to hear anything else. She fled upstairs and locked herself in. So she hears that weird interaction with Jake and somebody in his room. Again, I would not be in this apartment. The phone rings and Jake's like, hey, Darcy, it's for you. And it's Brandon, and he is calling to apologize for like Liz, I guess. Him and Liz and their drama. It's just stupid and awkward. She can't sleep, of course. And she's hearing a bunch of squeaking. And she, of course, is like, oh my God, more fucking rats. Worse, bats. There are bats in her room. Not one, not two. A lot of little bats are flying around her room. To which, again, outside of the supernatural, I'm just thinking of all of the diseases. And I know there's a lot. Bats are very good for our environment. Build a little bat home in your yard. They eat mosquitoes. I have wild bats around my barn. I love them. Don't touch one. Don't touch a wild bat, please, for the love of God. Don't pick one up. It's not their fault, but they have a lot of diseases. Hire a professional. Do anything else, but don't pick one up. But anyways, tons of bats in her room, which is very scary. Because again, if they bite you, you could get like a really serious disease. Or just really sick. Flying everywhere. And at this point in time, I'm just like, rats, bats. Like there's too much vermin in this apartment. Too much vermin. It was the 90s. They didn't have like Clorox little wipes to clean and disinfect everything. So like they literally washed sheets that a dead rat was on with blood. These rats and bats are probably shitting everywhere. You know, they're just shitting everywhere. Are they going to clean it? Are you going to have a company come and clean and disinfect this room? Because a wild animal is pooping guano, bat guano. Ace Ventura, number 2. Guano is everywhere. Of course, Jake is nowhere to be found. She's screaming in her room, bats. It's very Jumanji at the beginning where like the little girl's being chased out of the house with bats. Very that. Jake's nowhere to be found. Why did he take charge of this child if he's not going to fucking be there? She calls Brandon because that was the last person she talked to. She's panicking. She calls Brandon. How does she know his number? In the 90s, I guess we just remembered numbers like way easier, or maybe she wrote it down. I couldn't remember a number. I remember numbers from the 90s. Don't remember anybody's number now. But as she's waiting for Brandon to show up, she's investigating Jake's room. Because remember he chunked that towel in there? Or that thing. And as she's in there, she finds old lipstick in the closet, and like the outline of maybe where that fire exit enters his room in his closet. Like kind of like Coraline, like just like behind something, she sees like the outline of a door. Brandon comes over. They're trying to figure out how to get bats out of a room. And he's like, let's just wait until the morning and I'll have Kyle come help me. Because they were thinking of getting a towel, like each hold a side of a towel and like just kind of hurting them out of the window, which I would have loved to have seen. But he's like, I still don't really think that you should be doing this, Darcy. I'll just wait until Kyle's up in the morning. And she's like, okay, I guess you can go home. And he's like, no, I'll stay. You don't have to twist my arm. He mentions that he has always thought that she was beautiful ever since Jake showed the picture of her before she came. And you're just kind of like, but Jake didn't know she was coming. And he said, and that's what she says. And he says, well, Jake, I think, got a picture of you from your mom one time or recently and showed it to everybody. And all of the guys were like, wow, she's super hot. They, of course, sit on the couch and have a little makeout session. You know, Darcy's frazzled. Brandon is there to give her a gorgeous tan shoulder to cry on. And so she and him have a little kissy session. They fall asleep on the couch and wake up to Liz standing at the door. Great. And over Liz's shoulder, Kyle pokes his head over. And Jake's in the kitchen going, oh, I didn't know that y'all were in the... Oh, I didn't hear y'all coming. And he has a mischievous smile, kind of like he left the door open so that they could see this lovely canoodling on the couch. And he's just like, oh, whoops. Liz, Kyle, I didn't know you were here. Sips coffee. Jake's hand is bandaged. Darcy says, why is your hand bandaged? And he's just like typical guy, like, oh, I just hurt it. Don't worry about it. Obviously, Liz is pissed and Kyle is trying to keep everybody calm. Kyle and Darcy are trying to keep everybody just like, hey, what if we made breakfast? What if we all went out for breakfast? I'll make omelets. Darcy offers to make omelets for everybody. And she notices Jake never has food in this apartment because she's looking for stuff to make omelets, which is literally just fucking eggs. And he has nothing. She's like, do you eat? What do you eat? So they are going to that finally open farmer's market that they kept ending up at last night. They go to the farmer's market to get shit for omelets, which is so barefoot Contessa. And they drag Jake with them because they're like, Jake, come with us. And he's, of course, like, no, I gotta work. And Brandon and Kyle are like, you work all the time. Have a goddamn omelet with your damn niece. Get some damn sunshine. You're in this club or you're in this museum. Like, get out, man. And Jake's just not really into it. And we have this exchange. And bear with me, again, it's very hard to find 3 guy voices in this dialogue. So if it's not perfect, just know I'm trying. Jake, I think you should move Darcy downstairs, Brandon said. But when Jake didn't answer, he got louder. I said you should move Darcy. I heard you, Jake said impatiently. And you should move to the attic. Yeah, sure, whatever she wants. You're lucky she'll even stay in the apartment after what happened, Brandon went on. All those bats. I don't know why you're making such a fucking big deal out of these damn bats. Big deal, Darcy began, but Jake cut her off. When they probably just came from the crawl space. What crawl space? Brandon, Kyle, and Darcy echoed in unison. Jake looked at them as if they were slow-witted children. There's a little space in the wall down near the floor. It's practically under the bed. I keep boxes and shit stored in there. Stuff? Brandon snorted. You mean like bats? That kind of stuff? Oh, sure, Brandon. Jake came back at him. I breed them. It's one of my side jobs. Oh, God, Darcy shuddered. They could have been crawling all over me. They probably nested in there and just wanted to change the scenery, Jake shrugged. I mean, it's not like anything happened. They're just bats. Well, what if they didn't come from the crawl space? Darcy blurted out. What if they came from somewhere else? 3 pairs of eyes fastened on her and she lowered her voice. What I mean is, where else could they have come from? Jake looked impatient. How should I fucking know? A cave maybe, some old ass building. There aren't any caves around here, Kyle chuckled. Then I give up. You tell me where they came from. Jake's nervous glance went over their surroundings and walked on ahead of them. What's his problem? Kyle mumbled. Who knows? Brandon shook his head. But he sure doesn't act like he wants to be here. What really happened to his hand? Brandon shrugged. Well, I'm not going to ask him. Me neither. As Kyle and Brandon made their way along the row of stalls, Darcy caught up with Jake. You seem kind of nervous. Didn't you sleep well? No. He gave his head an abrupt shake. Are we through here? Can I go? I've got a million things to do. Well, why don't you go then? Darcy frowned as Jake walked away and Kyle rejoined her. Oh, I forgot to mention, the way they got the bats out is bats are nocturnal. And so in the daytime, they're just sleeping. And so Kyle just went in there and picked them all up and put them outside. He was like, that's all you had to do. And Brandon's like, and Darcy says, oh, Brandon, then you didn't have to come after all. And Kyle looks at Brandon and is kind of like, I think I know why he wanted to come over. After this horrible exchange with Jake, she thinks again she sees Elliot. She sees Marshall Mathers over there and she fucking bolts after him because she's like, I'm not about to be told I'm crazy again. I'm going to catch his ass. She's running. She cannot catch him. These little sketchy ass white boys, they just dart through the crowds and she stops in an abandoned lot. Great. And she finds a pair of sunglasses with blood on them on the ground. As she is observing these sunglasses with blood on them, a wet hand grabs her ankle. Now, I tried rereading this of like, how did it grab her ankle if she's in an abandoned lot? But apparently there was like junk and shit strode about and a counter, and it grabbed her from beneath a counter. I don't know. A wet, sticky, icky hand grabs her ankle. She grabs a 2x4, swings back to hit whatever is on her ankle, hits Jake accidentally because he's right behind her. She's hysterical, has a bloody shoe and a bloody calf, and he's being a fucking dick about it, as you can imagine. And she's like, oh my God, look at the blood on my shoes. Oh. And he says, that's what happens when you get your skull cracked open with a 2x4. She stared at him and he shifted his eyes away and attacked his muddy jeans with a vengeance. I'm sorry I hurt you, but do you really think I'd make something like this up? Come on, let's just go back. Why did you follow me? Darcy asked, but Jake continued brushing himself off. Why did you come after me? Jake's quick movement slowed, stopped. For a long moment, he studied the mud on his shoes. Kyle said you'd run off. I got worried. You and Brandon weren't even around, Kyle. How did you even know I was gone? Jake's stare was as even as her own. Kyle started yelling, and I saw you run off. I heard all the commotion. You were parting the crowd like the Red Sea. You don't have to be a damn detective to... Was there really a fire at the club last night? Darcy blurted out. You said you were going to bed, but you weren't even there when Brandon came over. What, I have to check in with you? Jake gave a snort, but his hands were busy again, brushing at his shirt with quick, nervous gestures. Someone put a rat in my bed and bats in my room. Elliot's been following me. And I'm supposed to know all of that, he said impatiently. Sounds like just a bunch of coincidences to me. You can't go around accusing Elliot of shit you're not even sure of. Come on, we gotta get out of here. Why are you so nervous? Darcy's voice raised. Why do you keep looking around like that? Are we being watched? Are you scared of something? I don't want to be here, okay? All this talk about rats and bats and people stalking you, it's making me fucking crazy. Now, will you just lay off? For a split second, he sounded almost threatening. Don't nag me, Darcy. I don't like it. And I don't like girls who do it. You're sounding to sound just like your mother. Don't you say that. Don't you ever say that to me. Without warning, Darcy flew at him, only this time he hit the ground. He took Darcy with him. As she tried to swing at him, he pinned her arms easily, looking down at her from the vantage point on top. What do you think you're... Get off of me! Darcy was furious, but the more she struggled, the tighter he held her. What kind of uncle are you anyways, beating up your own niece? Quit calling me your uncle. Jake slammed his arms down hard and glared at her. I'm not your uncle. We're not even related. His face was just inches from hers. As Darcy gazed at him open-mouthed, the sparks in his green eyes began to fade. I'm adopted. I bet your mom and dear Aunt Alicia never told you that, did they? Hell nah. It would have offended their sense of propriety and good breeding. As if that wasn't bad enough, I lived with their father, who they hated because he was a plain decent man who could have cared less about fucking money. Darcy felt his heart hammering against hers. Without warning, he rolled off and released her. Forget it. Get up. They started back without a word, Jake avoiding Darcy's confused eyes. As they slowly approached the street, Kyle ran up to them, out of breath. Where were you? His hands went nervously through his hair. We looked everywhere. Yeah, what's up? Jake cut him off. Kyle didn't seem to notice their disheveled appearances as he glanced anxiously towards the market. I can't believe it. This is awful. They found somebody. For the first time now, Darcy began to notice the commotion. People running, gathering at one end of the stands. She could hear muffled screams and faraway shouting. In the distance, a police siren wailed. What is it? She could feel the fear in the air, and she heard Kyle's answer even before he spoke. A girl, he said. He sounded numb and sad and horrified at once. The vampire, her throat. As Darcy stared down at her foot, she could almost feel the wet hand leaving its blood print on her ankle. So, hey, he's adopted. It's sad that's the first thing I went to. Like, my Blanche Devereaux self was just like, adopted? Oh, we ain't that related after all. But he did pin down a 17-year-old girl. He didn't hit her, though. He was restraining her because she came after him. I don't know. It just seemed like a skerfuffle, if you will, that I'm just like, ooh. I guess he was trying to restrain her. But still, he's not a very calm person. And then poor little Kyle. Poor little Kyle. I just feel so bad for poor little Kyle. He just wants an omelet. He just wanted an omelet. And he's like, fuck, there's another fucking murder. Just wanted my omelet. Jake, guess what? Take a drink, leaves to go to work. After all of that, he leaves. Brandon and Kyle are at the apartment with Darcy. She's making omelets. It's not super as fun as it was supposed to be. She's just awkwardly making them and they're eating them. Brandon and Kyle are being really secretive. They're kind of talking around her in the sense that they don't really believe what she's saying. And she's not enjoying being talked about as if she's not fucking there. And they're just like, Elliot's a great guy. They literally say, he's really nice to animals and kids. Okay. She goes to work after the most awkward breakfast. And she avoids Elliot. Luckily, he's kind of avoiding her. I think he can read the vibes. She can't stop thinking about Jake because that's kind of like a huge bomb. But I guess not much because she doesn't really know this guy. So it's not that crazy as if you had like a huge bond with someone and they're just like, I'm not your dad or I'm not your uncle. I mean, this guy, she just met for a day. So it's not crazy. But then I guess, I mean, it is still weird if you're attracted to him. I guess it's good news. She goes to the apartment. She digs around Jake's room again and she finds that bloody towel, which is disgusting. This apartment sounds like a nightmare. But she finds a bloody towel and Jake catches her. And he, of course, does the typical, get the fuck out of my room. Kyle goes to pick her up again. Again, they are bopping between the club, the dungeon, apartment. I guess it's all like within a few blocks. And we have this. I want to give Kyle some time because Kyle's my favorite. So I want to give Kyle some airtime here. They're getting on the motorcycle. Hey, what's wrong? She forced a smile, shaking her head. For a minute, she didn't trust herself to speak. Darcy? It's nothing. I'm just feeling, I don't know, empty or something. He didn't laugh. His eyes searched hers, and in their depths, she recognized real understanding. Hey, it's gonna be okay. Is it, and this is her thinking this, is it, Kyle? I want to believe you, but is there something really wrong here, or am I just being paranoid? We don't have to do this, Kyle was saying, his eyes full of worry. I can take you back, or we can go anywhere you like. No, that's sweet, but no, I'm not going to ruin your evening. You're not. Quit talking like that. I'm being difficult. I do that sometimes. Uh-oh, then you might need a spanking. Kyle's eyes twinkled as he helped her off. It's a tempting thought, but Brandon probably wouldn't be too happy about it. Now you quit talking like that, Darcy blushed. There's nothing going on between me and Brandon, and he's in trouble enough already. Nothing, huh? Kyle gave her a sly look. That's not what I hear. What do you mean? What do you hear? My, but we seem awful curious, Kyle laughed, walking in a little ahead. But I should warn you, Liz is not going to give him up without a fight. You're pretty presumptuous. Darcy looked indignant, but Kyle only chuckled. Presumptuous? Just because Brandon woke up on your couch this morning? I told you before, we were just talking and we fell asleep. Darcy sighed, exasperated. Anyways, he's probably the kind who attracts girls like crazy. She tried to sound indifferent, but Kyle stole a knowing glance at her. He's the best, Kyle agreed, at just about everything. Then gave a wink. But you're different, aren't you? Different how? From all his others. All his others? Huh? Kyle gave another grin, then led the way to the outdoor stage. The viewing area was already packed. As they found a spot near the front, Kyle stood a moment, looking around. Brandon's supposed to meet us here, if Liz doesn't kill him first. Darcy didn't find the subject that amusing. As she sat down on the ground, she noticed Kyle watching her thoughtfully. Darcy, I have to tell you something. And he goes on to tell her that he and Liz put the rat in her bed because Liz was pissed at her for taking her job that she didn't ask for. Like, take it up with Jake. Don't take it out on Darcy, okay? Take it out on the employer. But he says, like, we didn't know you at the time. We thought it would be funny. They thought it would be funny to kill a rat and cut its head off and put it in. Oh my God, the 90s were wild. We just let psychopaths just roam, didn't we? That was like a prank. It wasn't. I grew up in the 90s. That was, please believe me, if I said like in the 90s, if someone chopped a rat's head off, it would have been seen as pretty weird and like, whoa, not a prank. But in the media, this was like totally like, they got ya. But she's also like, does Jake know? Because Jake thinks it's a fucking cat. And he's like, yeah, Jake kind of knew it was like Liz's idea because apparently Jake and Liz went on a date and he knows Liz really well. Like, this town's really small if everybody's just dating one another. Anyways, she goes to a fountain to splash water on her face, which I'm like, gross. But I guess this whole novel, my germophobic self is just like, oh my God, everybody's just like sleeping in beds that have rat blood and splashing their water with public fountain water. Gross. This is why I don't go camping. She hears familiar voices fighting in the distance. Why is this one so special? Liz snapped. What is it about this one that's got your charm working overtime? She happens to be a very nice girl, Brandon retorted angrily, which, I might add, is a pleasant change. Yeah? Well, I know she'll end up like all the others you go after. I know that you'll try to make me jealous and you'll dump her and come back to me, just like always. You're really sick, Liz. You know that? Brandon sounded tired. Really fucking sick. As Darcy glanced up, she saw Kyle standing beside her, his face like a scolded puppy. I know you're really upset. I don't blame you, but you shouldn't be wandering around here alone. He broke off in surprise as he heard Liz lash out into a tirade. He gently touched Darcy's shoulder. Come on, you don't need to hear this. You really think you're perfect, don't you? Liz's fury carried out loud and clear, and Kyle winced. God's gift to women. Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Tall, Dark, and Stupid. If you don't stay away from little Miss Darcy, I promise you I'll fix it personally. So no one will ever want to look at her again. Shut up, Liz. Shut up. I mean it, Brandon. I swear, if you don't forget about her, I'll... And suddenly she choked, as if her body had been jolted, as if her threat had been stopped halfway in her throat. In their hiding place, Kyle looked at Darcy and slowly squeezed her hand. You listen to me. Brandon spoke carefully, deliberately, every syllable tight and controlled. If you dare, if you even think about anything to Darcy, I swear. You'll do what? Liz said smugly. Silence fell, thick and dangerous. As Darcy rested her head against Kyle's shoulder, they heard Brandon's heels fading swiftly into the night. That sounds like the most toxic couple. And we all know that couple. We all know that couple. And it's so sad. It's so sad. The whole time, Brandon and Kyle and like all the other guys, they're trying to tell her like, oh, all your crazy stuff is just Liz. Liz is just messing with you. Liz is just messing with you. She's just trying to break you mentally. And they're like, you know, it's fine. It's fine. She's just being a bitch. She's just being a bitch. Don't worry about it. Darcy goes home. She has a scary vampire dream where she thinks like a guy is standing over her bed breathing. She wakes up and she hears the guys talking about Liz to Jake. Because although they told Darcy, hey, she's no big deal, she's just a bitch, they go to Jake and they're like, look, Liz is going to really fuck up Darcy. You have got to like stop going. You got to be home and like watch her. She's going to get hurt. Liz is fucking crazy. The next morning, Jake pulls aside Darcy and they do have a little calmer heart to heart. He mentions he and Liz did go out, but Liz did it to make Brandon jealous and Jake didn't know. And it really scarred him because he hates being manipulated by women. And he points out that Darcy's mom and her Aunt Alicia are of the same type of women just manipulating men to get what they want. Remember, Darcy's mom is literally on like her 4th marriage to a really rich guy so that her and Darcy will be okay. He asked, what does your mom say about me? And she's like, Mom says you're crazy and really irresponsible. And he agrees. He's like, your mom's right. Stay away from me. Don't fucking come near me. And she asked Jake, like, do you really hate women? And he's like, yeah, I really fucking do. Don't come near me. To which I'm like, this alongside the fact that he has a horror museum. I'm just saying. I'm not saying all people who love horror genres want women to be abused. That's not the case. I mean, Guillermo del Toro is a huge horror nerd and he's one of the nicest guys in the world. I'm just saying, we all know that type of guy. We all know that type of guy that's like really into a lot of slasher fix. And you're like, why do you delight in women with like sexual liberation? Cause like the whores always get killed. Like, why does that? The psychologist in me is just like, why does that tickle you? Why do you like watching that to relax? She, in frustration, throws her pillow against the wall and there's a note. There's a little note under her pillow and it says, you are my chosen one, written in lipstick. We go back to work. Elliot confronts Darcy and he's like, why do you always stare at me as if you, like, I can't see that you're staring at me? And he says, I know the glasses really unnerve a lot of people. I can take them off if it makes you more comfortable. He takes them off. He's given kind of like Gojo, like he's a really pale white boy and he's got really pale eyes that are even more unnerving than the sunglasses. And he's in his weird way, he's trying to be nice. And he's like, do you want me to not wear the sunglasses? Do they creep you out? And she's like, your eyes creep me out more. Please put them back on. She has an anxiety attack at work. Again, this has been only like, what, 3 days? 2 days at max. Kyle and Brandon show up because apparently they have nothing else to do but torment this poor girl that showed up. She confesses she thinks Jake is the vampire. She's like, I think it's Jake. Jake hates women. Jake is angry against women. Jake had bloody clothes. Jake had lipstick. I found a lipstick note. I think it's Jake. They are absolute jerks about it. Not only are they dismissive, they're just like almost making fun of her. And it's super fucking rude. And again, I know at the time this was acceptable and you could tell historical women that. But even today, the movie The Barbarian has a good moment of that where the little Skarsgård guy is telling the girl, she's like telling him what she saw and she's freaking out. And he literally says this line like, I didn't see what you saw, so I need to go check it out for myself. And I was telling my eldest and my husband, see, even in a nice guy format, y'all won't ever fucking just believe us. If we're like, hey, I think Jake's a murderer, everybody has to be like, but why? But why? No one is ever going to just point blank believe us. And it's bullshit. Brandon does mention the reason that Elliot thinks he was spared from his motorcycle accident is because he is a savior, which is weird to say, but it comes in handy later. Darcy's like, I'm glad you brought up Elliot. I think he's an accomplice. I think he's helping Jake. Brandon and Kyle are of the team if they think that Liz is trying to mentally break Darcy. They're just like, no, Liz is the only person that obviously is pissed at you. She put the rat in your bed. She's trying to break you, which is not a wrong assumption. The way they handle it, though, is so fucking rude. There's a way to be like, Darcy, I totally see how you would see that, and we should investigate that side, but let's also not neglect the person that is super pissed at you and left a dead rat in your bed. Let's not also negate that. And here, I want to give Elliot some airtime. She stood up and turned around. Elliot was peering at her through the beaded curtain. With a gasp, she jumped back, one hand pressed to her pounding heart. He looked so eerie in the half-light. The reflection of his glasses, his face ghostly pale, yet tinged with a flickering red. How long have you been there? She demanded. I thought you left a long time ago. Elliot said nothing, just watched her. Darcy moved slowly to the end of the counter and began stacking brochures into nice, neat piles. You know, Elliot, she said carefully, and she couldn't believe she was doing this, her words spilling out even as she tried to stop them. I thought I saw you at the farmer's market this morning. It's funny, you know, I just looked up and you were in the crowd. Just like that day outside the club and just like that time outside the cafe. She heard her voice shaking, realizing he had stepped out into the room. It's really funny, she said again, her laugh weak and forced, because nobody believes you're ever really there. He was directly across from her now, the counter between them. Are you really there, Elliot? She whispered. She felt his eyes even though she couldn't see them, felt their slow, careful appraisal in the long silence that followed. She tasted fear and tried to swallow, but it stuck in her throat. I'm your savior, Elliot murmured. I'm your hope. To Darcy's surprise, he started around the corner towards her, and she clumsily backed away. Stay away from me, Elliot. I mean it. Sooner or later, he said howlily, it will happen. He took another step, and Darcy turned and ran, plunging through the beads, their blood-red shimmering, closing off her escape because there was no escape now. Elliot was right behind her. Don't run from me, Darcy. Elliot's voice echoed off the dark, damp walls of the tunnels, and Darcy tried to run faster, but the shadows tricked her, played with her, and all the creatures watched, enjoying her panic as she raced past them, searching for a place to hide. She fell into the last chamber and couldn't see Elliot, couldn't hear Elliot behind her anymore. And this quote, I'm very good at hiding, he said. Good at hiding. Darcy spotted the barricade at the far end of the room and clambered over into unfamiliar darkness. It was the distorted world she found herself in. From the dim ceiling lights, she could make out the clothes in their half-finished states of confusion. Mannequins with manacle stares, half-clothed, posed expectantly without weapons or victims. A beast in chains clawed an invisible tormentor. A deformed executioner lowered an axe that wasn't there. As Darcy hoisted herself up onto the stage, she spotted the perfect hiding place. A covered grave where two body snatchers grinned down in evil anticipation of their find. Darcy fell to her knees by the make-believe grave and ripped back the canvas sheeting. At first, it was just too horrible to believe, too horrible to register or even recognize. The girl laying there, in the sunken floor, hands folded upon her breasts, like a lifeless statue. Only this girl was real. This girl was... Liz, Darcy whispered. Oh my God. And she was so still lying there, so strangely white, except for the thin line of blood across her throat and the 2 spots of lipstick on her neck. Ooh. What a way to end a chapter of Liz. I don't know. How long has she been there? I just keep going, Montana. They're at the hospital in the next chapter. Darcy doesn't mention the Elliot thing because Elliot called the ambulance and drove Darcy to the hospital because Darcy was just so fucking like panicked and it was all a blur. So she's like, I would sound even crazier if I was like, Elliot was chasing me, but I drove with him to the hospital. She goes to the bathroom to splash some more water on her face. This girl loves a fresh hit of funky water on her face. And she notices the bathroom door opening. And she's kind of watching it out of the corner of her eye. And then it closes and she can hear footsteps running. And she's just like, oh, no, you fucking don't. She opens it. No one's there. And she is going fucking crazy. She knows something is happening. God damn it. She knows something is happening. But how do you prove it without sounding hysterical? Everybody's panicked. Kyle is very upset. Obviously, it's his sister. Jake's upset. Brandon's not as upset as he should be. It just kind of, Brandon's just like, it'll be okay. Anyways, Liz will live, but she asks to see Darcy. In this, Liz apologizes to Darcy, says, I wasn't being a girl's girl. I was very jealous of you. The second Jake showed everybody your picture, Brandon just pretty much shouted how beautiful you were. She's like, I felt horrible. And they kind of have a bonding moment of Darcy. She understands this is out of Darcy's control. You can't be mad at someone because your boyfriend finds them attractive. You have to be mad at your boyfriend, which she is. She beat the shit out of him. But you know what I mean? But then again, Darcy is kind of hitting on Brandon. Both of them are somewhat correct because Liz is very correct in being upset at Brandon for cheating on her and at Darcy for not really stopping Brandon. But in the same vein, Liz is super abusive to Brandon. Brandon's obviously into Darcy. And Darcy doesn't really know these people. I don't know. I'm just kind of like, if you're there for a few days, who cares? But then that's not super nice. So I understand Liz. I also understand Darcy being 17 years old, again, in a town for a few days in your hormones. And you're just kind of like throwing, caution to the wind and just like, fine, I'll kiss this guy. Who cares? Girls will be girls. But Liz has to tell Darcy what the killer told her as he was killing her. Darcy asked Liz, did you leave a note under my pillow? And Liz is like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Keep in mind, Liz is super sedated, and so it's super hard for her to get this information out. But he came out of nowhere. The dark grabbed me, told me. What? Told you what? You can't tell. If I say, you can't tell. He said, if I told the police or anyone, he'd kill me. He said he'd know if I did. Please, I promise. I won't say a word, not to anyone. He bit back my head, put something against my throat. Dizzy, couldn't breathe, blacking out. I felt it cutting me, and him holding me so tight, so angry. Darcy closed her eyes, trying to block out the images, but she still saw Liz's face, Liz's mouth open in a silent scream. He was so careful, and it hurt. And he said, Darcy's eyes opened. She stared down at Liz, relieving the terror. Tell me what he said, she whispered. He said, tonight, I choose Darcy. Dun, dun, dun. So Darcy has that on her plate. And again, she can't tell anybody because she doesn't want to put Liz in more danger. The boys want to eat now that they know Liz will be okay. Jake is being weird about Darcy. He's being like, is it possessive or protective? There's a very thin line between the two. But he's just kind of being overbearing of like, what did Liz say? What did she say? Did she mention anybody? Did she say anything? You should sit by me. Come sit by me. Come sit by your old Uncle Jake. And Brandon's kind of like, hey, chill out. And Jake pops off at Brandon just like, you're awfully calm for your girlfriend having her throat slit. And I don't know how you can eat with Liz hurt. And Brandon's like, well, I'm hungry. It's just Jake and Darcy now. She is so nervous riding with Jake in this car because he's being so fucking weird. She's like, pull over. I'm about to throw up. And he's like, oh shit. For a guy that lives with rats and bats in his apartment and keeps a bloody towel for days at the floor of his closet, and he's worried about puke in his car. Anyways, she pukes on the curb and just runs. She don't know where she's running, but she's just running. And he runs after her and grabs her and puts his hand over her mouth. And again, I know he's trying to restrain her. Don't put your hand over my mouth. And he's like, his reaction is, oh my God, you stupid little girl. You can't go screaming into the worst part of town. You're going to get killed. That vampire's going to come after you. And she's like, well, what about you? And he says, well, he only attacks women. They wonder how Liz's body got into the dungeon. And Darcy asks that to Jake. She's like, Liz was technically, according to the police, attacked outside. And her body was dragged into the dungeon. Not a lot of people have the keys to the dungeon. Do they, Jake? Do they, Jake? They get home. They switch rooms. Jake takes the upstairs. Liz takes his gross downstairs. She calls Brandon. And he, just like Jake, is super pushy about what Liz says. He's like, hey, what did Liz say? Hey, what'd she say? You should tell someone so you can get that pressure off of your chest. You shouldn't have to like sit there with it. You should tell a friend. You should tell me what she said. Tell me what she said. And again, Darcy's telling Brandon, like, I'm really fucking scared. I think Jake is the vampire. And as she says that, the phone is taken from her. And Jake is holding it, hangs it up, and says, I really wish you wouldn't have done that. Jake leaned toward her, looked hard into her face. You're really afraid of me, aren't you? He sounded bewildered. You really think? He left the sentence unfinished and closed his eyes with a groan. Damn. Please let me go, she whispered, tears filling up her eyes. Let you go? Jake echoed. Go where? Your mother doesn't give a damn about you. Never did, as far as I can tell. Come on, Darcy. I thought we needed each other. Now it was Darcy's turn to look stunned, as Jake leaped to his feet and began pacing. She brushed hastily at the tears and ran back her hand across her runny nose. I mean, look at you, Jake muttered, but more to himself than to her as he walked back and forth across the living room. You're so pretty, so sweet. You cleaned up the place. But you hated it when I did that. I never said I hated it. I said I couldn't find anything. Well, it was such a mess. It was such a mess. I was such a mess. I expected a carbon copy of your mom, and instead I got you. God, if I wasn't such an honorable guy. Darcy straightened, bewildered. What are you talking about? And if you weren't so damn innocent, he sputtered. I'm trying my hardest not to care about you, and you think I'm a murderer. As they stared at each other, Jake suddenly flushed and looked away. Darcy's eyes widened in shock. You didn't even want me here. Don't tell me what I want, Jake said gruffly. How was I supposed to know you were going to be so nice? How was I supposed to know I was going to, like you so much? Darcy's mouth fell open. You like me? Well, obviously you haven't gotten that impression since you've decided I'm trying to kill you. Well, the lipstick, the towel. What lipstick and towel? In your closet, you told me not to go in there, and I thought, well, excuse me for wanting some privacy around here. I'm not sure what lipstick you're talking about, but if it's the one I picked off the floor in the lobby the other night, you may as well know I'm known to use my pockets as temporary trash cans. Is that a crime? But the towel on the floor, and it was all bloody. And I told you I hurt myself. Jake waved his bandaged hand under her nose. So what? I'm so clever that I dumped my evidence of my crimes in my closet? Jake scowled. Not only am I a murderer, I'm a stupid one too. Well, Darcy looked at him helplessly as he began pacing again. Not that I owe you any kind of explanation, but a guy jumped me after work, and the fight got pretty nasty. Jake was still stalking back and forth like a caged animal. She remembered the first time she saw him and how cute she thought he was. Or maybe your mom warned you I had a psychopathic personality, he said to no one in particular. He thought a moment and shrugged. Or maybe you heard it from one of my old buddies down at the dungeon. But you talk to them. You talk about them like they're alive. You talk to them like they're real. Well, great. Yep, you got me now. Put the cuffs on me and just haul me away. Jake, I'm just trying to... So I talk to them. So I take care of them. Make them look nice for the public. Fix them when they need fixing. And they're the ones I talk to because they never break my confidences. They never turn on me. They never blame me or condemn me or try to change me. They take me for what I am. His voice faded and his eyes looked full and sad. Gus was like that. And he loved them so much. Those dumb statues. They never leave me, you know. They never leave me. Darcy realized she was off the couch. She laid one hand cautiously on his back and felt him tense. He turned around. You know, I watched you last night when you were sleeping, and I was wishing you could always be safe and happy. I thought how it'd been so long since I really cared about anything. He lowered his head and his voice was almost a whisper. So you'll forgive me, right? If I find this murder theory of yours a real slap in the face. She searched his eyes, the odd mixture of hurt and amusement. She lifted one hand gently to his cheek. He took it before she could touch him and studied her with the same skeptical expression. What are you so afraid of, Darcy? He whispered. Suddenly she was in his arms, her head against his chest, his arms tight around her as she clung to him in confused desperation as she blurted out the story of Liz at the hospital, terrified to do it, hating herself, but telling him just the same, wanting to feel safe and protected, needing to trust someone. I don't want to die, she sobbed, and he stroked her hair as if she were a child, his voice soothing, hypnotic, as he reassured her. Shh, you won't. You won't. And he tucked her into bed, brought her warm milk, helping her hold the glass, guiding it to her lips. Drink it, he coaxed. It'll help you sleep. Sweet, peaceful sleep. I can't, she said, even as she drank it, even as his hand tilted the cups to her lips. You'll stay, won't you? Of course I will. And still, he held her until finally, she began to drop off, her head pillowed against him, her words murmuring over and over in the same strange dream. Don't leave me, please. I'm here, Darcy. I'll watch over you, rocking her to sleep. I didn't know what else to do, she tried to tell him, and again he shushed her, his voice like a strange lullaby. Of course you didn't, he said. Who can you really trust? Please stay, please. I'll watch over you, Jake smiled. I'll stay with you. What? I was kicking my feet when I read that chapter. I was like, not Jake liking Darcy. He said some things. He said some things that weren't super appropriate. But wowie wow. I'm sorry, y'all. I couldn't help it. I was kicking my feet. I was like, not Jake liking Darcy and thinking that she was cute and young and innocent and she's 17 and that's not super awesome. But just let's remove that for a second. Let's just remove that for a second and just, I don't know. I thought it was fun. Everyone. So I took my tripod down and I just remembered an important part of this story real quick is the reason that Jake is always so nervous all the time and is constantly at work is he owes a lot of debt to some shady people and they tried to burn down his club. They also beat him up and that is why he was bloody that one time and that's why all those creepy guys are always looking at Darcy and he told Darcy to stay away from him was for her own protection because he didn't want some of these mafia guys to come after her. So I forgot that, and on my walk to the mailbox, just remembered. Okay, and here we have the climax of our stories, because that lovely milk, we love milk on this channel, that lovely glass of warm milk had a little more than just milk in it. Darcy's waking up. She feels like she's in a dream. It's hazy. She's not in her room. Not a dream. It's real. I wish I could read y'all just these like last few pages, but I know y'all don't want to like hear that because you're here for a recap, not a reading. But I'll try to like skim it as best as I can, because like truly I don't want to ruin this ending. This is one of the best endings that we have read on this channel. Elliot, what are you doing in my dream? This is no dream, Elliot said. Shh, Elliot whispered. You don't want to scream. They'll find you if you scream. She was trying to wake up. She couldn't. Her limbs were tied. Elliot shoved a piece of cloth in her mouth so she couldn't scream. There were heads everywhere, arms, torsos, body parts. They're not real, Elliot said. They can't hurt you. She's in like the bottom warehouse where they make these mannequins, and he has her tied to a table with like cloth shoved in her mouth. Why couldn't you have liked me? He whispered. You always ran away. She's thinking, where's Jake? She screamed at him silently. Oh God, what have you done with him? What have you done with Jake? This is the workshop, Elliot went on quietly, as if they were having a leisurely visit. This is where we take care of Jake's family. I help him do that. Elliot bent closer, nodded. Now I'm helping him take care of you. And she's thinking, fuck, it was Jake. Jake tricked her. Don't be afraid. I've been with you all along. I'll be with you now, Elliot said. Do you believe fate can be changed, Darcy? He spoke slowly, in that same strange monotone, and every movement was deliberate. Unhurried. I think sometimes it can be that some of us are given the power to do it. It wasn't your fault, Elliot went on, holding the glass up to the light, watching the contents swirl and dissolve. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He seemed to be satisfied with the concoction he mixed. He glanced at her thoughtfully. You weren't supposed to wake up. It will be better for you if you sleep. Then you won't be afraid. It won't be long now. Jake will be here soon. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She's obviously fucking panicking. Back to Elliot. I was always a different kind. I didn't want to be. I just was. You might understand. Jake said people forget about you too. That's why I felt close to you. Because we're alike in a way. My mother was always so nice to me, Elliot said softly. But she's dying now. He turned to her, his sad face. I wish she could stay with me always. I wish she could live forever. Darcy whimpered again, and Elliot lightly touched her cheek. Oh, Darcy, I didn't mean to make you sad. I'm sorry. He looked down at her, his expression almost loving, and then he seemed to remember the glass in his hand. Here, you have to drink this now. She tried to fight him, to twist her head away. As he struggled to hold her, pull out the gag, she seized the opportunity to scream. No, Darcy, no. Don't scream. Elliot seemed distressed, and for the moment forgot the glass as he tried to stuff the cloth back into her mouth. Jake wouldn't want you to scream. Someone might hear you. He crammed the rag between her teeth, then tensed as there was a knock on the door. That's Jake. It's time, Darcy. It's time for this all to be over. But not Jake. Kyle shows up and busts down the door and knocks Elliot over and is like, what the fuck is happening? Working through the ropes, she managed to squirm onto her side, but couldn't get her body to sit up. She tried to yell, to scream, but only gurgled in frustration. The two boys slammed down into furniture and walls. She saw the gleam of a knife and tried in vain to cry out in warning. The boys stumbled to their feet, locked together. Elliot's blazed aimed downward. Without warning, there was a cry, and Darcy saw Elliot hit the wall, an expression of disbelief draining his face white. In terrible silence, Darcy stared at him, at the slash of red across his stomach, the blood soaking through his ripped shirt, flowing down his jeans. Elliot crumpled to the floor, and then, as if released from some awful spell, Kyle finally looked at her. Darcy, oh my God! I can't believe it. I thought I'd lost you. He pressed her tight against him as she tried frantically to talk. He pulled the gag from her mouth. Oh, Kyle, it was Jake and Elliot. I was right. All those girls. I know, but you're okay now. But Elliot was waiting for Jake. Jake's coming. Hurry and untie me. Shh. I think I hear something. As they froze, not daring to move, Darcy wondered how they would ever escape. Brandon was supposed to be taking care of Jake. I wonder if something went wrong. Come on, I've got to get you out of here. Can you walk? I don't know. Jake drugged me. I'll try. And they're trying to escape through this goddamn museum of horrors in the dark. She's drugged off of milk and whatever the hell was in it. Elliot's bleeding out on the table. She's trying. They hear footsteps. They go past the Dr. Frankenstein's exhibit, and there's a lot of surgical equipment. And there has been a theory throughout the book that the 2 pinpricks on the girls have been like a scalpel has been used. And she looks down at Dr. Frankenstein's tray of surgical instruments and notices the scalpel is gone. She's getting dizzy. They're freaking out. They're trying to get out and also hide from whatever is fucking finding them. And Kyle picks her up because she can't walk anymore. She opened her eyes, expecting to be in the lobby. They were on a shadowy stage, the Dracula exhibit. She could feel Kyle's breathing, hard and shallow, his sweat-soaked shirt, his quivering muscles. As she looked at him in confusion, he put a finger to his lips and then gently eased her down onto the floor. He moved her to the edge of the alcove and looked anxiously up and down the tunnels. What is it? Darcy mumbled as she was trying so hard to focus in on his face as he glided like liquid through the shadows, as he stopped beside Count Dracula, as he unfastened the long black cape and swept it gently around his own shoulders. Kyle, what are you? And his eyes were so strange when he faced her, glittering like the mannequin's eyes, wide and shiny with a light that didn't look quite real. And he took a step toward her, smiling, as Darcy moved unsteadily away. Will you stay with me? He whispered, moving closer. You must choose. It must be your choice. No. Oh God, Kyle! And his hand crept out of the long black folds of his cape, holding something sharp, something silver and gleaming against the blood-red lining. Darcy, my chosen one, will you stay with me for eternity? It's Kyle! Not Kyle! Oh, not Kyle. Okay, I'll put my opinions. I'll wait till the end. We're at the last bit. Okay. Here we get Kyle's exposition. They tried to save you, Kyle whispered. They tried to keep you away from me, but they failed, all of them. They should have known better, really. I'm immortal, he murmured. I'm invincible. Slowly her head moved. No, please, no. I watched at your window. I put bats in that crawl space in your room. I cut the head off the rat, and I enjoyed it. His expression grew hard. So who's the real actor? He demanded. The true actor. Who is the best vampire of all? He stepped away, his eyes traveling lazily over her body. It was always Liz, he mused. And I was always Liz's brother. And then it was always Brandon. And I was always Brandon's friend. But I knew, deep down, I was more than just Kyle. I was someone very different. When we went to the carnival that night, Gypsy understood. She knew I didn't belong. Not to any world. Not alive, not dead. Just existing. Unhappy. But she recognized the power I had inside me. And after she told me, I knew I could have my very own world. I didn't need anyone else's. Those girls, Darcy said dully. All those poor girls. I gave them a chance. Kyle's voice rose defensively. More of a chance than anyone ever gave me. But they didn't understand all I could give them. And so I chose for them. He thought a moment, one finger on his lips. His eyes shifted toward her in a sidelong glance. You're the one I love, Darcy. You're the one I've always loved. You were born for me. You're my chosen bride. No, Kyle, please. Jake and Elliot would have stopped me, you know. They tried to hide you away from me, watching you all the time. I couldn't let anyone hurt you. That's why I had to stop Liz. He smiled a little. God, how I hate Liz. She doesn't feel anything. Not like I do. She doesn't care. She doesn't love anyone. His voice hardened, words coming from between clenched teeth. That red hair and her red mouth. And even when she talks, it's just hate, hate, hate. Red and angry, and it hurts me. Darcy stared at him numbly. It was her lipstick you used. Liz's lipstick on every victim. She deserves to die, Kyle murmured. She deserves to die over and over and over again. You're wrong. She doesn't know how to love. She wants to love. Like she loves Brandon. Like she treats him and Jake. Like she treats me. His face grew reflective. Of course, Brandon would want you. But this one time, Brandon doesn't win. Kyle, please don't do this. It'll be so easy. You'll see. So simple and beautiful, just like a wedding ceremony should be. The scalpel glinted in the half light. I'm very good. Just a sting. That's all. And then we'll be together. We'll just fall asleep and be together always. Without warning, he swept Darcy up in his arms and carried her across the stage. In a blur of absolute terror, she tried to kick and fight, but her limbs were useless and the ropes held her in a merciless grip. It won't work. Jake will hear you. He'll be down any second. Kyle stuffed the gag back in her mouth with an apologetic smile. I took care of Jake, Darcy. No one will come now. You belong to me. She saw the open coffin on the floor, smooth satin lining, so cool against her skin as Kyle lowered her into it. He held her firmly on her back, stroking her hair, her cheeks, her lips, her throat. In one graceful movement, he climbed in beside her. Wedged up against him in the narrow space, she felt him work one arm around her shoulders, forcing her head against his chest, and in that position, both of his hands met easily behind her back. My chosen one, he whispered. My beautiful bride. Now we'll be as one, of the same blood, of the same world. She felt the icy sharpness of the scalpel. I love you, Darcy, he whispered. His kiss was gentle. His hand moved swiftly at her back. Don't do it, Kyle! A voice shouted. With a cry of pain, Darcy felt the slash of the blade on her wrist, the warmth oozing down her arms and hands. As Kyle struggled to close the lid of the coffin, a pair of hands grabbed him and lifted him and flung him onto the floor. You can't destroy me, Kyle screamed. You can't destroy what I love. As Darcy looked in horror, Kyle clawed at the air, his teeth bared, kicking and biting at the assailant who had wrestled him on the floor. Darcy! Darcy! Someone was yanking at her, gag, arms around her, lifting her up. Oh my God, I'm bleeding to death. Help me. Darcy! Kyle screamed. His arms were out, reaching for her, even as someone held him back. Darcy, don't let him take me. We belong together, Darcy! Hold him, Jake, Brandon yelled. He heard her. She's bleeding. There was a sickening thud as Kyle's head hit the floor and he lay still. Darcy felt the ropes fall away and heard Brandon swear as he grabbed her wrist and tossed the gag at Jake. It's pretty deep. Wrap up this. We'll call the police. Elliot. He got Elliot in the workroom. I'll go. Just get her out of here, Brandon shouted. Damn it. Damn it. Jake was all thumbs, trying to bind up Darcy's hands and keep watch over Kyle's prone body upon the floor. As he fumbled the makeshift bandage, Darcy suddenly caught hold of his arm, forcing him to look at her. For a long time, their eyes held, and then at last, Jake shook his head. When he spoke, his voice was trembling. Hell of a mess I'm in, right? Your Aunt Alicia's coming back for you, and you and Dracula off on your honeymoon. Darcy didn't let him finish. She threw her arms around him as if she'd never let go. I'm sorry I had to read like pretty much a whole chapter, but I just didn't want to summarize that. That was a huge chapter. That was amazing. They are later at the hospital. The poor nurses in this hospital are like, what is happening with this little crew right here? Okay. This is like the second time we've seen them. I like this. Jake tells him, of course you realize all this time you and I were tied for first place as murderer. And he says that to Elliot, who's in the hospital bed. And Darcy and Elliot and Jake are just having a good old time laughing at how Darcy, although her instincts were there, she knew someone was after her. She was very wrong. But Jake's like, okay, so I told Elliot to like keep you quiet and keep you safe. Didn't know he'd tie you downstairs and try to gag you. And Elliot's just like, he just doesn't get like that's inappropriate. He's just like, oh, you told me to tell her to be quiet. What better way than just closing her mouth? And then they're all kind of having this cute moment with Brandon and stuff of just like, Jake's like, I thought it was you, Brandon. Brandon's like, I thought it was Liz's crazy ass. Elliot's like, I thought it was Brandon too. And Darcy's like, I thought it was everybody trying to kill me. And they lead up to, I think Kyle is still alive because they talk about Liz doing some soul searching after this moment. And she wants to see Kyle, but they say Kyle won't do it. I don't know. Maybe it'll happen someday. So I think Kyle is still alive. Is there a sequel to this? Oh shit. I didn't even look. I need to find out if there's a sequel to this. And here, dear class, let me read you the last page of this novel. Jake straightened, clapping his hands on his thighs, breaking the uncomfortable mood. So what about you? You and Liz patch things up? Brandon shrugged evasively. Well, hey, us famous actors don't have time for romance, you know. There's so much adoration out there and so little of us to go around. He looked pleased with himself as Jake laughed. Even Elliot looked amused and shook his head indulgently. But anyway, Brandon cast a sly look at Jake. I might be pretty busy visiting Darcy at her aunt's house. She does get back tomorrow, right? But you don't know where she lives. Jake stretched and looked totally unperturbed. I know where she lives. You don't. I can find out. I want everyone to come see me, Darcy broke in. I can't stand Aunt Piranha. She winked at Jake, who winked back. You'll come and get me, won't you, Jake? I mean, I still do have a summer job, right? Brandon raised an eyebrow. Oh, right. Never trust a guy who lives with monsters, Darcy. He'll either lock you in the attic with his bats or put you in one of his exhibits in the dungeon. I've been in one of the exhibits, Darcy returned deadpan. I prefer the bats. You can tell the future, Elliot. Brandon leaned back, folding his arms lazily across his chest. Care to give a prediction? Elliot looked at Darcy, as if studying her face. I see happiness, he said quietly. In people who care about you. As Jake grinned and Brandon nodded, Darcy reached out to squeeze Elliot's hand. Well, she smiled, nodding at the three who watched her. That would certainly be a nice change. Looking at the back, and I don't think this has a sequel. But again, if you see a Richie Tankersley Cusick novel, pick it up. The girl knows how to write a spooky kooky one. All right. Montana's state of mind with this novel. I loved it. I thought this was great. I truly did not know who the hell maybe y'all listened in and were like totally picking up the clues. I didn't know it was going to be Kyle. He was like the last one I was expecting, which I guess is the whole point. But I mean, it's super cute though. Like I love the idea of this like little himbo, this little cute little golden retriever boy, him being the vampire. That's super fun because you think it's going to be, is it going to be the guy who's into horror movies who thinks vampires are real? Do you think it's the guy who's going to play Dracula in the play who kind of looks like Dracula? Do you think it is the logical one of Liz just like coming for Darcy because she's encroaching on her territory? Do you think it's Elliot just because he's fucking creepy? No, it's the cute little golden retriever boy. It's the drummer. You never expect it to be the drummer. I love this novel. I thought this was absolutely fabulous. Like I said, I was reading through it, enjoying it. Now, a lot of these, they're not bad reads, we've discussed, but I do have to push through because there's a lot of information in them. Some I do have to push through. This one I really enjoyed reading. I was so excited to finally read something that didn't feel like homework. I wouldn't change a thing. I think it's absolutely fabulous. I want this to be a universe. I want another summer at the dungeon and the sexual tension between Darcy and all these guys. Like, I would love this to be a series. I would have picked Kyle, but I guess that's not going to work out. Now, I know I can't imagine her mom letting her stay again, because all of the police reports that this child has had to fill out while she has been there for a few days. If I was her mom, I'd be like, no, this girl has had to fill out dead body and like another dead body. And then she's been taken and tried to get, like, no, she's not coming to you, Jake. Because her mom don't like Jake anyways. So I don't know how they thinking she gonna come back, but I mean, she is almost like 18, so I guess she can come back on her own. My favorite part, I don't know what's wrong with me. I really loved like the little confession of Jake being like, I really care about you. I think you're really cute. I was loving that. Like, while reading that on the couch, I was totally like a little girl at a slumber party, just like, what? Oh my God. And I don't know what's wrong with me, but I loved it. And of course, in a realistic context, it's absolutely inappropriate. Absolutely inappropriate. But I loved it. In a fictional world, it was super duper fun. In a soap opera, I would have eaten that up. You know, let's pretend these novels, again, are very fictionalized soap opera worlds. None of this is based on real life occurrences or how normal people would react. I'm kind of having so much fun reading these horror novels that I don't want to stop. But I know we have to get back to our usual programming. Now, our next book is another Caroline Farr novel. A headstrong heiress inherits a pirate's mansion and a legacy of plunder and death. So we're going pirates, spooky kooky pirates. That's fun. Now, Caroline Farr in our last one, he or she, go watch our last novel, Witch's Hammer by Caroline Farr, to get that information. It was a good book, but they really fumbled the ending. And that's what I loved about this novel. Amazing ending. Again, y'all might have picked it up. I truly didn't know who the hell it was. I was like, is it Jake? Is it Elliot? Oh my God. And then Kyle, and I was like, not Kyle. Anyways, let me read y'all the back of this novel to give you a preview. Do any of y'all ever like make it this far in the videos? Because a lot of y'all like act surprised when I show you the next novel. And I'm like, I talk about it in these videos, but I understand. I cut out of the last of YouTube novel videos before they're truly ended too. So don't worry. I still appreciate you watching. Where horror lay hidden. The trouble started when a lovely black-haired Gail Walton began to ask questions about Granite Folly, the property she had inherited from an infamous pirate ancestor. Why was the rich, eccentric John Felton so anxious to buy the crumbling, isolated mansion? To find the answer, she and handsome young architect Adrian Hammond explored the deserted ruin with its honeycomb of secret passages and dungeons. Little did they realize that their curiosity would lead them into a scene of sinister intrigue, terror, and violence. And we have another girl in a lilac dress running away from a castle, and she's in the water. So that's exciting. Well, I hope you enjoyed that novel. It was super refreshing to read something that had actually a fun plot and mystery involved. And I can't wait to read our last of the horror series. And then after that, we will be getting into Thanksgiving season. And I have some interesting Thanksgiving ones coming up on the docket. But I will save that for our next video where we will discuss that. Anyways, I'm done blabbering. Thank you for watching. And I will see y'all all next week.